Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at the brand new Helios 2. I'm going to highlight some of the features of the case in comparison to the first generation, as well as show you overall design based on a black build and as well as a white build example. The new ROG Helios 2 comes in three variants. You first have a white that is completely solid white, and then you have a black that has a brushed aluminum look. In addition, there is a limited edition Hatsune Miku collaboration version of the case, which will not be shown in this video, but I have done a previous video of. Starting at the top of the case, you will see the straps that have been a staple on the original Helios, and they make a return on the Helios 2. Now the design for these are going to be a little different depending on the white case or the black case or the Miku case. In addition, these straps are no longer a one-piece design like on the original. Under the straps is the top dust filter. Once removed, we'll expose the radiator mount that is below it. This radiator mount is removable for easier installation and supports 360, 420, and subsequent smaller sizes. Moving forward from there, we have the front USB hub, as well as the front controller portion. Now, on either side of the hub, you'll notice that there's two tabs. Holding down these tabs will let you select from modes between motherboard control, as well as color select if you do not use one of motherboard control for the RGB. On the other side, you'll have fan auto and fan motherboard control. In addition, the four top USB 3.0s and two USB-Cs are split to two different connectors, so you will need a motherboard that can connect to both USB 3s and both USB-Cs. In this build, I'm using a Z890 Apex, which has support for that. In the front of the case, you'll find a removable dust filter that pulls up and it matches the exact cutout on the front panel. Looking at the bottom, we have another air filter. This air filter goes all the way to the end of the power supply. Moving on to inside the front of the case, you will also find another spot for radiator support. Here you can mount a radiator up to 420mm and 60mm thick. Now, going back to the radiator support at the top, the case does support a 360 and 420 as I mentioned previously, but if you were to take a look at how the 360 looks mounted versus the 420, you can tell it's definitely more 360 friendly than 420. Looking at the 420, you can see that end tanks are hitting it end to end. Now, this may be a problem for some AIOs with larger end tanks. At the same time, if you plan on water cooling, I would not use a radiator thicker than 30mm for the top. In addition, when using a 420mm radiator, you might notice that you probably can't screw in all the screws of the radiator. In this one, I only have the middle and the front screwed in. One of the new features on the Helios 2 is the GPU mount. No longer do you have to use screws for the top three slots. You can simply use this clip-on bracket that then screws in from the rear. This is the same implementation that they used on the ProArt PA602. Another new feature on the new Helios is the wire clips along the rear of the case. Personally, I find these clips too small to be of any real use. Much like the first Helios, once you remove the wire cover, you will find that there's two 3.5 bay drives at the very bottom. These are removable and also support 2.5 as well. Moving on up, you'll find four removable tabs for 2.5 SSDs, as well as cable management ties. Now, I found both sets of ties to be pretty useful, the smaller one for small cables, and the large ones, as you can see, fit every I/O cable from the case, as well as my 24-pin. On the top left, you'll find a controller board. This controller board is controlled by the buttons on the top of the case I showed you previously. This board still has 6 PWM and 6 ARGB headers left for expansion. Keep in mind, to use this board, you will need to plug in the 3 SATA power adapters required.
So we've gone over the Helios 2, and I just want to quickly take a moment and talk about the Helios 1 in comparison. So let's say you have a Helios 1 and you're thinking, should I upgrade to the Helios 2? I'm going to break it down for you real quick. In terms of overall color, if you have the black one, the new one is more black than the old black one. If you had a silver white, the new one is pure white, right? So if you wanted that pure white aesthetic, you can achieve that with the new one. Now, with the older one, at the same time, while they look very similar, there are very subtle differences. First of all, the glass is not interchangeable. So the glass on the original one is not going to fit on the new one, right? So let's say you have the original, you want to buy the new one, you don't have extra glass, so be careful with the glass, right? Some of the changes are very subtle, but I'm going to quickly go over them real quick. Now, you're going to have to excuse the dust on my Helios 1 because this has been sitting around for a very long time in storage. Okay, in fact, still has that Z590 Xtreem in there, the glacial. and even the chip is still in there. But anyway, so on the original, we had a vertical bracket designated over here, and this would actually put the card extremely close to the glass. So you would actually get pretty bad temperatures if you were to vertical mount. And let's be honest, if you were trying to vertical mount an Astral here, you're going to hit the glass, right? So on the new one, instead of having this portion, I showed you guys, we have the locking mechanism, right? So you don't have to mess with screws anymore. And on top of that, we have this bracket. Now this bracket is interchangeable on the new one. I mean, it's for the new one, it's not for this case. And you will change the existing location of the PCI bracket and you'll replace it with this one. And this allows you to mount the GPU closer to the motherboard, therefore giving you more room to breathe, as well as, you know, more support for a larger in terms of depth GPU, something like the Astral, which is 4 slots, or there are some 5-slot monsters possible, right? In which this would allow for more kind of compatibility with. So, like I was saying, a lot of the changes are going to be subtle, right? So if we look at the PSU shroud, we maintain the same design overall with the new one, but rather than have these large perforations, we have more of a streamlined kind of perforation. We kind of got rid of these unnecessary, I don't know what they're for anyway. But we also did not have cutouts underneath the motherboard. Instead we had these kind of cutouts behind the PSU tray here. On the new one, you have 2 cutouts right underneath the motherboard tray, which allows for easier routing of cables to your motherboard. And that's kind of a good point, right? I'm going to quickly give you guys my conclusion on these 2 cases here. Now, if I haven't said it already, my disclaimer is that Asus did send me these 2 cases, right? I did not buy these, right? But then again, they sent it to me to do builds in and probably ship them out, not necessarily give you my critique on them. But nonetheless, we're going to do that anyway. So as you can probably tell, I bought the original. I showed you guys the original. And when I bought the original, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I think internally in the inside, it could have used a lot of improvement. But then again, that's a couple years ago. And a couple years ago, if we take today's standards and we compare it to that Helios 1 when it came out, you can't really say it was a bad case, right? Because a lot of kind of reviewers at the time said it was a good case for a first-time effort. And I think that kind of still holds true today. So now with these, Asus has had some time to kind of revamp and redo everything, right? There's other cases in the market. And I think that cases overall is something that Asus does have to work on, right? Generally the cases, while they've worked on the lower end, and the lower ends are really well built, are really cheaply priced, like the what was that, A21 comes with 3 ARGB fans and it's like $100 half the time, right? And it's very sturdy. It's really hard to say bad things about a $100 case that comes with 4 fans, 4 ARGB fans. It's actually 4, yeah. So, but with cases like this, like these are $400, right? So when it comes to $400 cases, we have that room to kind of criticize and say these things might need improvement. All right. So let's just quickly go over the small things I didn't like, and then we'll go into things I did like. So the small things I don't like is they made no improvements for EATX support. I'm using a tube here because I'm kind of far away. The EATX support motherboards with a 9-degree wire, 24-pin, that support hasn't improved, right? I would kind of wish they would have done that. I don't understand why they insist on making this kind of slanted motherboard tray. Like when you guys saw from the back, you'll see that it is raised in. I don't know why they continue to do that. Why not just make it flat, right? Then you wouldn't have that forced 24-pin kind of grommet region, okay? Additionally, the GPU disk wire cover / GPU support, that has had pretty much no improvement over the first version, okay? There's no need for this anymore, right? Like I was talking in the Miku video, this product doesn't exist anymore, so we don't need that. And these GPU supports that are built in, while they are very nice, they kind of have this design that instead of just having like a straight edge like this, it's a staggered step. I don't understand why we need a staggered step. And honestly, in today's day and age, this inside finger is, I guess, I don't see the need for the outside finger. It's so long out there, it doesn't reach anything, right? So I don't see the need for the outside finger. What they should have done is in between these 2 bars, right, puts another mount that sits in the middle that can rotate and swivel out, kind of like the Pro Art, right? So they could have done that. Or I don't know. I'm not a case designer, but I just feel like this piece should have been redone, especially since it's been so many years. Now, one more thing. You'll notice in this case, I am using the Herculx right? This is not a nitpick, just saying. I'm using the Herculx because my first PCI slot is not obstructed by NVMe like on this one, right? On this one it is. So I can't use the Herculx here, even if it's a 2.5 slotter. It's still going to be extremely tight. Astrals are very thick. Obviously, it's not going to fit here. But you can obviously use the one that comes with a GPU, right? Most of them have a GPU. But if you were a ROG fan, you wanted to use a Herculx, it's not going to work out. Now, I do kind of like the artwork here, but I feel like maybe a metal stamp, some type of stamp rather than this kind of just sticker. Because if I look at the sticker, it's not exactly applied like super even. It's very even, but I'm very OCD about this stuff. It's not super even. Okay, there's something like that. And at the same time, when we talk about radiator compatibility, that really hasn't changed, right? So while the top does support a 420 and a 360 here, I can tell you the case is much more geared towards a 360. Like when I showed you guys the shot moving across the top, you can see that I couldn't even screw all the screws in for a 420, right? You know, because the end tank is too long. So with that said, it's still a 360 at the top in reality, right? Even though it does support 420, it's if you have a longer end tank one, it may not fit. Okay. Now the front does maintain the 420, but do you really want to intake hot air blowing into all your stuff? You don't, right? And at the same time, I feel like this side could have been used for as a maybe a 360 mount, maybe have a mesh back, right? Then if you have like an AIO card like the Astral LC, then you can mount the radiator on the side, right? There is no Asus case that does that outside the Hyperion. And the Hyperion has a glass back, so you're just not really cooling air. And I did bring this up to one of their case PMs. So overall, if you're into the ROG aesthetic and you like the look of the case, I can tell you that these cases are very well built. All right, there's nothing wrong with them. They're very well built. I mean, they literally changed a lot more things than it looks like. They've changed the top control board. The design is completely different, even though it looks very similar. So there's a lot of subtle changes everywhere, like I was mentioning. Overall, having built a regular system in here and more of maybe a more production workload system here, I can say that the building experience is very streamlined, no real issues. Okay, water cooling, probably still not the case. All right, you could do a 360, 420 here. I don't know. I mean, you would have limited space for a reservoir, right? You'd have to have a narrow one. You might be able to do kind of there's no pump mount on this case. It doesn't come with a pump mount at the bottom. So you could technically mount something here, maybe drill a pass through. It's still not really a water cooling case. And just like the original one wasn't. And a lot of people kind of forced it into be one. And you can get away with it, but it's not ideal. But for an AIO air-cooled build, it's a perfectly good case. Now, is it worth $400? That's going to be up to you. Now, how much of that $400 is kind of tariff related? Let's just be honest, right? This case does not cost 400 US in China. Okay, I think it's actually 300. All right, so or close to that. So it's 25% less in China, right? So how much of that is really due to global economics right now, at least for the United States? I don't know. But overall, I like how they made the filters match the slits and everything like that. So if you're a ROG fan, and if you really like a white case, this is a really nice case for a pure white case. The black one has the aluminum finish rather than the solid, right? So they're nice cases, but 400 is a hard price target for what it is, right? But the fans will, like I said, buy what they want, right? So with that said, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, put in the comments. Try to answer them. But with that said, thanks for watching. Stay safe and take care.